Most short guys hate their height, and I used to too. But then something happened, and now I actually like being short. Here's why. Like I said, I haven't always liked being short. Between the ages of 15 and 19, my height brought me nothing but anguish, misery, jealousy, and despair. I used to be normal size back in elementary school. And then something happened. I started noticing that all the other guys were getting taller and taller. I didn't think much of it at first, but by 8th grade, everyone, including myself, was just starting to obsess over girls. And a lot of the other guys had gotten so much taller than me by that point that I was a target for harassment. People made fun of me, they threw things at me in class. The one girl I really had a crush on brushed me aside and called me a creep. What I discovered in high school was that losing a little bit of weight and getting a nice haircut wasn't quite going to be enough. I mean, I fit in well enough freshman year. I was below average, but I still wasn't super below average. That first year of high school, I developed a crush on my one-itis, and I would talk to her in art class. I got her number, we would text, and then eventually things fell apart between us. And by the end of that year, I started connecting the dots and noticing that it was the tall guys not only that seemed to dominate the school and bully everyone, but also they were the ones that got all the attention from all the girls. So I started to feel worse and worse about myself. And by the end of that year, I went to get a doctor checkup and they checked my height and they were like, "Chadlet Maxing, there's something wrong here. Like, you haven't grown since you were 12 years old." And she said, "Well, it's not the end of the world yet, but we should do some tests and figure out if your growth plates are fused yet or not." And about a week later, went in and got the x-ray, came back, yes, growth plates were fused. I swear, I started banging my head against the wall. I was screaming in the doctor's office. They actually had to take me and commit me to a psych unit because I was self-harming right there in the doctor's office. So that summer, I really got down to business. I started doing all kinds of research, trying to figure out what could cause someone to stop growing at such a young age. And that's where I discovered precocious puberty. All the symptoms lined up. But that summer, I just was completely devastated upon that discovery. I was discovering that I was at a permanent, insurmountable disadvantage for the rest of my life due to something that I had no control over whatsoever. And it was all because of chemicals that the super wealthy elites that run these corporations decided to put in the products that they market towards the children of the plebs that they control. I cried and cried and cried. And that's why it hurts so bad to learn this information. Society, the media, everything around you says big and strong equals good and small equals bad. And you never hear small and strong paired together. It's always big and strong or tall and strong. Even the video games I played at that time glorified height. I'll show a clip here right now of Fable.
Tall and strong, aren't you? Ah! I think I'm in love. Tall and strong, aren't you?
That summer, I went to the same Bible camp that I had gone to every year for the last 5 years. All the kids in my area went there. And as we had gotten older, talking to girls became a much bigger component of that whole experience. And I had a huge crush on this one girl there, and I didn't feel like I could talk to her. So I drew beautiful pictures and showed them to her. I acted cool. I played my drum. And eventually on one of the last days, I was just so depressed and I was so stoned. And I just remember laying down on the ground and just crying. And that girl actually invited me over to their group. And I hung out with them for a bit. But the guy there had seen that I had self-harm cuts on my arm. And he just railed into me for it, telling me that I was a bitch and how his sister does that for attention and blah, blah, blah. And the girl was actually defending me and saying that he was being rude, but I just felt so unwelcomed that I just walked away. So as I got further on through high school, things got worse. The other guys continued to get taller and I continued to stay the same size. By the time I was 16, things got really bad. This one guy who was like 6'8", he noticed that I had said something on Facebook that he didn't like about 9/11 being an inside job. And he decided to make my life hell because of that. And I just felt so small and insignificant and inferior and just completely dominated. Seeing this tall guy treat me that way, I had a mental breakdown again. And I actually left school. I went into independent study. And then 3 months later, I went to a different high school. And it was around that time when I was getting ready to switch schools that I really started to go full in on gym maxing, wearing thick soles and military boots to give me an extra inch and a half, just doing everything I could to bulk up, make myself look bigger and stronger, to compensate for my feeling of inferiority. But no matter how bulked up you are, it will never have the same effect on your confidence as looking down on everyone. So there I was at a new school. Every day I would come home, I would work out for 4 hours a day, 4 days a week, just to try and make myself feel good enough to appeal to these girls. And what I ended up doing to build enough confidence to be able to talk to this girl was I started drinking, smoking huge amounts of weed, and taking edibles multiple times a day. And I did have a couple major crushes. One of them I was always too afraid to approach. And the other one, I had a very easy class with her. And eventually, I actually attempted to talk to this girl, kind of show her that I liked her, ask her out, etc. And because she had dark skin, I thought she could have been Mexican or Native American. So hell, I'll ask her, hey, are you part Native American? And she looked at me like this, like, I'm Mexican. No girl that's interested in me would take an innocent comment like that and react in such a hostile way. So I pretty much just gave up on her. And next day, this 6'6" football playing guy who was actually like a year or two younger than me went and sat next to her, and I just see him leaning over talking to her, and she's just like I could tell she wanted it from the tall guy. She wanted it from the guy who was big and strong, and that just crushed me, man. Like, I became so depressed in that class. That year, senior year, one of the biggest turning points for me that pushed me towards hating myself and feeling extremely depressed about my body was when I was in AP government class, and I heard this girl, and she was talking about how this guy that she knew, and I knew him too, had made fun of her weight because she was being rude to him. So she decided to say something like, well, a girl needs a tall man. You're small and weak. And I heard that from across the room, and that guy was the same height as me. And I just felt so horribly offended, because it's just like, first of all, weight is something that you can change. Like, just go on a diet, for Christ's sake. And I never forgot that. It stuck with me for the rest of my life, and it destroyed my confidence. And I honestly attribute that to one of the main things that pushed me towards almost ending it all. You might be thinking, didn't all the drinking and drugs have a horrible effect on your education? And you would be wrong. I literally was not able to focus and do my work unless I was under the influence of alcohol and cannabis at the same time. So yeah, I graduated. I was drunk at graduation. I was so insecure about my height that when they asked us all to stand up and walk in front of everybody and get pictures taken, I actually refused to do it. I refused to get up. They thought I just had a bad attitude. But I was just too embarrassed to admit that I didn't want to be seen looking short next to all those girls with high heels on. So there I was, I turned 18, I ended up going to a local community college, and my height insecurity continued. And I just kept getting more and more convinced of my inferiority, kept working out, kept drinking, and I had almost no confidence to ask girls out. I did push myself through it and do it several times. They almost always rejected me. The classes that always scared me the most was always Spanish class, because the teacher would call us to the front of the class and have us stand with random other students and recite things, etc. And whenever I got called to the front, it was almost always with a bunch of people that were taller than me. And a lot of the girls were taller than me. And there was this one girl who was 6 inches taller than me. I literally stayed away from her as far as possible. And then one day I got called to the front of the class, and I had no choice but to go up there, and it straight up traumatized me. I would wake up in tears and a cold sweat multiple nights a week, dreaming about being humiliated like that. And this whole time, from the age of 14 to 19, I held on to this vague hope that maybe I would grow a few inches more, because the doctor said, yeah, there's a possibility you might grow a little bit more, another inch or two. But it never happened. And by the time I was 19, I had realized that if I was going to grow, I would have grown by that point. And all hope was lost. I was in complete despair. And that fall, I had reached my lowest point. I was about to self-delete. I had that thing to my head, and that's when it changed. I didn't plan it, I just snapped. And all of a sudden, in that moment, the misery flipped. The pain became pleasure, and the feeling was just euphoric. all of that weight on my shoulders lifted off. It was like I was in heaven. All of my desire to be the alpha male, to dominate, to be the big man in the group, to be large and in charge, it all disappeared and flipped to the complete opposite. I would have these fantasies of thinking about this small, weak, stunted by chemicals, inferior male who had the worst upbringing possible and grew to be 4'10" and was just the punching bag of everyone and the one who got bullied and put down and was the servant of the towering elites. And I would picture myself as the big, strong man, 8 feet tall, broad, powerful shoulders that could get any woman he wanted. And I would have this thick fertility goddess woman that I would feed and feed until she was basically immobile, laying in bed, being fanned and pampered. Meanwhile, I was the big man of the tribe, and I provided everything for everybody. In addition to that, I pictured a tall, masculine-looking woman with broad shoulders and muscles and flat chest and narrow hips, the complete opposite of the fertility goddess. I would picture them as like dominating and humiliating this short little manlet, and just thinking like, how unnatural can you be that you're that puny and inferior compared to a female? My biggest nightmare that I could possibly ever imagine is being that puny, stunted, inferior manlet who gets abused by everybody and is considered the lowest level of the totem pole. Now, the reason I mention all these fantasies and all these dreams is because in that very moment when I snapped, all of a sudden that fear turned into a kink. The fear of being humiliated and laughed at and bullied and dominated turned into an intense, virile desire. All of a sudden, there was nothing more arousing than looking up at a towering god or goddess who's so superior to me and makes me feel like the puny little manlet that I am. Now, you might just say, oh, that's cope, oh, that's cringe. And I understand that not everybody gets it. Not everyone understands what it's like to go from being a sadist to a masochist in a matter of seconds. It is a mechanism of coping, and I believe that it's an evolutionary strategy to allow someone who is in that position of being at the lowest level of the totem pole to be invigorated with a will to live. If a person is too small and weak to defend themselves in the tribe, the only way for someone in that position to survive is by fully submitting to a dominant person, whether it be male or female. And if you hate doing that and it's a living hell to you, your life is going to be so bad because most guys do not want to be someone's bitch. But if you can learn to love it, it can be just as awesome as being that dominant alpha male towering over and dominating everybody. Think of it this way. If you're small and weak enough, you're at a point where you actually need somebody else to provide and protect for you to survive. In that situation, the roles are reversed. You can either have to work your fingers to the bone day after day to barely even be able to eke out survival for yourself, let alone a woman or a family. Meanwhile, getting abused and exploited and bullied by the big men of the tribe who take your resources and reallocate it to their families because they can. Or you can give in and surrender, release yourself to that feeling of submission, and finally relax. One of the problems with being in a situation like this is you're basically so vulnerable and helpless to that person that they can basically do whatever they want with you. Like, you're at their mercy completely because they have all the power. The power dynamic, the inequity, and the disparity between you is so great that you basically have no hope of ever being able to fight back against their will. The best that you can do is hope that they'll be a kind mistress or master, and if not, there's not a damn thing that you can do about it. And that's pretty much what makes it fun to me. Like, you have no choice but to submit to them because the alternative is complete and utter domination. And honestly, that helplessness is what makes it so exciting to me. So as a result of this biological adaptation, I was able to accept and even embrace my position in the social hierarchy. And that next year, 2016, was like liberation. I felt free from the shackles of self-hatred and comparison. I was finally able to walk up to women, have the confidence to say hi, to smile at them, to feel visible, to feel wanted. Because I went from wanting nothing to do with tall women, running as far away from them as I could, to actually being drawn to them and giving them positive attention And a lot of them gave me positive attention back. All of a sudden, those manly looking women that I thought were so disgusting before became the #1 most attractive thing that a woman could be to me. Now, I realize that most of you guys out there won't relate to this. Now, maybe you're not short, but maybe you have something about yourself that you hate so deeply that your brain was just forced to find some kind of weird way to cope. Have you ever had a moment like this where something that made you hate yourself suddenly turned into a source of pleasure? I'm interested in other people's stories, so if that's the case, I'd like to hear about it in the comments. But yeah, if I could go back to that moment, the only thing that I would change is that I would eat those chemicals even earlier and be even smaller and more unnaturally inferior. So yeah, if you like watching height pill content, either because you can relate to it, or you're a tall guy and it makes you feel better about yourself, or you're just interested in strange ways that people cope with their insecurities in general, subscribe to my channel. And if you're interested in seeing the opposite side of things about why life as a short guy actually sucks, check this video out here.